Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
I have wet coat the roof in neutral gray, and now on the dirty brush I pick up slate gray and just streak from the front forward. I'll have to keep loading in my slate. So we start at the bottom, and I do want them to kind of overhang these rows of shingles. I'm dirtying the brush with a bit more of the neutral again, so it's not complete slate. And as I'm getting up here, it's drying. So I'll streak a little of the neutral from the back again. And we'll take the dirty brush with the colors and just kind of streak down for the roof. Now remember that the other roof should end roughly in that area. We're going to bring the hedges, this vine over top anyway. And I'll put a little bit of the neutral coming from the back. Whoops. It's an old roof. Okay, that's good. That's roof. Behind the thing and some behind here, and making sure that we come up nice on the building. So we're just confirming all of this. Yeah, yeah. And we could put a little matcha out too if you want. Yeah. So let's just do it anyway, just in case.
So your three colors are?
So we've got plantation pine, medium hauser, and matcha. I'm not sure if I'm going to use matcha, but it just depends on what I've got here in my colors. So I'm going to load my sponge with dark on the bottom, the lighter on the top, work it back and forth on the palette, and I'm going to scrunch it so with a tiny bit of sponge, and I'm going to come in here kind of loose and airy where it creeps up on the side of the barn. We're going to put some over here to be behind that. There's going to be a vine creeping around the corner there. And then we have up here coming from, let me pull that down a bit. And we don't actually see the end of the house. So I want to put a bit more plantation pine on my sponge there, so it's darker to the back. So that way we have, do you see how that's creeped over onto it? Now we actually put leaves on top of that as well. So I'm gonna just, for the hang of it, I think I need a bit more plantation pine in here too, so I don't see through and see the building, right? So I'm gonna pick up on the light part a little bit of matcha. Work that in there just to add a little light into that. Not over there, because that's in the dark shadows. Now we're going to have leaves up here. That's what's going to be doing the light coming from the top of the roof. So that's not too bad there. All right, so that looks good for me. So where Liz has transferred her lines on, when we used the sponge, it came up higher. So really that bush is really going to start up here. So we will take those lines off. But if there's anywhere, and especially right here now because I added some more dark, that we need to have the shrub look like it's in front, so it's a separate one. If you look over at your colored picture, you can see that this shrub here should have a little bit of light on the top. So you're just going to go through with this and just correct a little bit so that we end up with little bits of light and dark, which is going to create more depth in our piece. So if you just come through and re-tap a little bit of light in a few of these places, and don't tap so hard that you're not going to be able to find the flowers that might be there. Okay, so that's not too bad. We've kind of added a bit more dimension in there. That's good to go. So we're good now to go ahead and to start with our flowers. So we're going to shade with black brown under the eaves. And I know we did a wash on there, but it is just going to strengthen that shadow under the corners a bit. And I'm going to come down either side of that strip we had on the corner of the building. So that kind of helps for him. As you see up here, you see the shrubby, well, you see this shrubby where it's a mess, and then up here it's all nicely cleaned up. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a bit of black brown and some plantation pine. Now I'm going to chisel underneath to kind of clean up. And you're going to look for where there's this shrub sticking out. We don't want him to be floating in midair, so we'll chisel something underneath him. And here, everybody's will be different. And then I'm going to take what I'm going to call a damp finger. It could be a lick finger, or I dipped it in a bit of water. And I smudge along here just to smooth those down and have the color kind of just fade out. Pick up a bit more. I want up here to be the darkest, so it just nice and dark. But you see I've got that little bit of smudgy that's coming out here. So it's just a little bit of black brown into the plantation pine, just to create a dirty, dark, shadowy underneath all this stuff. Okay, so you see the difference that that makes there. Alrighty. And blush pink on the dirty brush. Well, it's dirty brush now. Zero round. And what we're doing is we're going to put in these tiny little flowers that are up in here. So each time you pick up more, you might have more of one color than the other. And these are just dab, dab, dab. So we just dab them in, and away we go.
And that's with the zero round.
Yeah, that's with the zero round. So that puts those little flowers in there. If you feel like afterwards you need to go in with a tiny bit of green or something, you can. And as we get to the outer edges, wherever you're putting the end of your little vine, they'd be, of course, tinier. So this same color is, and same method, is over here. They're going to be bigger over here at the bottom. And as they get up, work their way up, they're not going to get up there, but as we come up to the top, they're going to be tinier. And you do leave a little room in between a few here and there. And as you get down to the bottom, you're going to widen it out. Okay, so that's the flowers you're going to do there.
So that's on this and this one.
Correct. So these are all just dabbed in flowers. So everything is just dabbed with the tip of the brush. We're not looking for too fat. See how if I go back with just a little bit of light afterwards? I like that. There. That looks good to me. I'm going to take a deer foot, 1/4 inch deer foot. I think this might be bigger now if I look at them. And I'm going to just take sand gray, pounce it out so it's splayed out. And I'm going to come in here and set it in. We want to have enough paint on the tip of my brush so it's going to create flowers. Do you see that I'm putting in round-ish clumps? So it's not a complete stipple. So we don't want it to be square by any means. So you'll pop a couple that stand out off the edge. And we do want to have sections where they overlap each other, because we're looking at nature doing this, right? Now I'm going to give my brush a wipe. I'm coming back and I'm getting my warm white. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to set warm white in on top of my sand gray. So this is going to give me a little depth to these flowers, that they're not just white. Sand gray dries a little darker, so what you're seeing here will have a little depth underneath. But do you see now how they start to look like round clumps? Now right now I see square lines here. So I'm going to put something off of there, and I'm going to bring something up a little higher here. I'm just looking at what I have created by doing this. I don't want it to be a straight line. So you kind of want to make sure that you're bringing different odd ones. Now I'll scrunch out my brush. If you look, I do have a little bit of just fine, and it doesn't matter what I get into on my palette, pounce it out, and then over here I have a little white shrub. And then way down the path, not the first one, but on my second one, and sometimes I'll give my brush a little twist, so I'm using different parts of the tip of the brush. Now I'll just toss. I have 2 deerfoots out here, both of them 3/8. Did I not? I did not grab a 1/4. I did want a 1/4, so I'm going for it now. Pardon me. I'm going to take also, here I am looking for the 1/4. I'm going with my 1/8. And these are these purpley spike flowers that are here. I couldn't remember what they're called.
Delphiniums.
Yes, thank you. In my note, I was trying to write what they were, and I couldn't freaking think of it, and I have them. Well, I had them. They didn't come up last year. But, so I'm going along these spikes. And we want these again to be at different heights. Then I'm going to just give my brush a wipe. They're still wet and dirty. I'm picking up a little bit of Perfect Perry. And it doesn't matter if I start at the bottom or the top. You want to see a little of the darker purple sticking through, and these colors do blend into each other. And again, now I want to bring at least 1 or 2 a little lower so that they're not at the same height. Next we're going to take on the heel of your deerfoot, 1/4 inch. I finally got one out. And the toe is Poetic Plum. So I've got these 2 colors. Scrunch them on your palette, and we're going for these guys. So again, these are more of individual clumps. And remember, we talked about them, pardon me, having some overlap in front of each other. And when you have a picture that ends off the edge, you always kind of bring a few off the edge. This heel, this brush is filled with paint in there. It needs a good cleaning. And if I end up with some on top of those guys, that's not going to be the end of the world. So I've transferred them where you had them. I'm stippling them where you had them transferred, Liz. And now I'm picking up on the toe of the brush the blush pink. Oops. Thank you, Debbie. I'll put them underneath. So I'm picking up my blush pink, pounce it out, and I'm going to start and just kind of add that. Do you see how I'm again allowing that black plum to show some depth in these flowers. I don't want them to be perfectly aligned with each other. But by not having them stippled from the top down in little clumps, they don't look like a flowered bush. These become individual flowers on the bush, not all stippled. So then we move down into the right below the grass. I don't think you have them.
I put on.
I'm just looking. Those are those. That must be them. That must be them.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do the same colors again, and we'll put those in here. Yeah. And we're doing those guys that are below the grass. And you have leaves. You're not panicking. It's because we're shorter here. That's what's throwing me off. Yeah. So we go with these ones again, and we're taking that pink and coming back in here. Okay, and then the other one that we have in our notes is where we take our zero round.
Here?
Nope, here it is. Liz, I don't leave my brushes in the basin.
Of course.
Come on. So I'm going to take all the same pinks, okay? So this is this guy that's over here. He's down in that little clump underneath the white guys. We can creep him out a bit. So that's like the flowers that we did up here.
Okay.
We're dabbing with the round brush. And what's nice about this is then you end up with the look of different types of flowers. Some dabs, some, and as we're closer to us, we get those delphiniums, which are actually done with stroke work, so we get actual closer to us, you see more of what the flowers are. So again, this guy's dirty. I come in here with a bit of the pink. So we're not looking for too bright. This guy's down in the shadows of the path. But it's just a little bit more of not just stippled. Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Using a number 4 filbert, I'm going to take and I'm going to base coat basically the flower in the Perfect Perry. Perfect Perry, no, sorry, I'm using Periwinkle. It is a little bit more to the blue. Now, Liz has lost a lot of her flowers because, so I'm just going to add another one in here where it wasn't. Then let's just come up here and put another one here. Okay, and I'm going to bring it right into that one. So we've got these flowers, and I'm going to take my dirty brush and I'm going to pick up warm white. And I'm going to take, and I'm going to press with the brush on the side. And we are going to be, every now and then, so you can double load once you get going because your brush will no longer be dirty. And so you're kind of making little clusters. So you see the lighter blue that shows up from the warm white. If I have one on top of another, which I just did this one, you would always do the guy who's on top last. So again, if I'm coming in here, I double load and I keep my dark down, my light up. And I'll do a couple petals, reload. So you're just doing little clusters of petals. And you'll be overlapping each other with these clusters, so eventually you won't see them, but you still, the last guys you put on, you will see, and the ones underneath, you still needed them to be clusters because we never know which ones are going to show up for us. I want to have another one here with the white, more white, so that it rounds my flower up, and again I would continue continue on those. Now, I'm gonna leave a couple for Liz, so you'll just re-wet
Yeah.
those. Okay, so over here, these ones are a little bigger, so I'm gonna press a little harder, or you could use your number 6. And now I'm going with, I'm having a brain freeze.
Purple petal?
I'm going to mix a little bit of white and Perfect Perry, kind of a 1-to-1 to have a highlight color for these. Probably don't have enough paint there. And then I'm going to just put a bit more of the Perfect Perry. Now Perfect Perry is more to the purple than
The periwinkle.
the periwinkle. So we're going to base coat our flowers. We're doing the same thing that we did before. These are darker. And it's nice to have the blue ones and then come over and we're into the, we're into the darker. So I'm going to do a couple of these. I'll just do a few because...
Should they be wet when you put the petals on?
Yes, that's why I said you'll have to rebase those. Re-wet coat. Okay, so now I'm gonna, my brush is dirty, so it's basically gonna be double loaded with the Perfect Perry. And we wanna have bigger petals. So again, it's a case of pressing a little bit harder.
Or using a bigger brush?
Or using a bigger brush. So I go through and I create, and you can see with the little bit darker color, it's a little easier to see it, but we still wanted to have some nice soft fluffy. Then I'm going to just pick up a little bit, and you can do a few at a time, of a highlight one. And I want to have, and it's just a little of that highlight on my dirty brush, so I can come in here and I can just lighten a few of them, and that rounds our little flower a bit more. So we're not going into getting tons of detail in these petals. These are just quickie little guys. So again, clean my brush. You want to make sure my brush should be dirty with the purple. The reason you clean it, you want to get that light out of it, but you should be giving your brush a bath every now and then. So again, it's the same thing. So you start with the dark on your brush and the Perfect Perry, so it's like a double load, and overlap. It's always best to come from the outer edges inwards. Fill those guys into little clusters. And don't try to go too far without reloading. And then I'm going to pick up a bit of my highlight and do on the dirty brush. Just a couple of light petals, and that's that. So up here we wanted that bright green. So I'm going to turn the piece. You can't see from that. All right. Am I using light user? Hang on, give me a second. So, I'm ready.
Colors are?
Plantation Pine, New Leaf, and Matcha. So I'm going to double load my brush in Plantation Pine and New Leaf. It has that bright green. Then on the bright green section, I'm going to pick up a little bit of Matcha. You start at the bottom of your branches, and we do press and slide little leaves. Of course, as you go, you get blobs of paint, and you can kind of work your way back and forth from branch to branch. That way you're not going to end up with as much of a uniform look, because each time you load, you're going to have a different amount. And so if you have lots of paint, you get nice little squishy leaves. Rothschild Cup says. Okay, so, and bring a couple down off. Now everybody's board or surface could be different sizes, so you may have to fill in a bit more. So I'm just, whoops, that guy's a fat, wide guy. I'm just filling in where Liz has her pattern transferred. And you can erase your transfer lines if you see them through afterwards. But you can see how bright that new leaf has a different kind of a green in there.
It's like almost spring, you know?
Mm-hmm. And you can overlap, you can fill in more if you like. So we have those leaves over there. I didn't bother going back after we've transferred, after we did that, because that was in this set. Pick up a little of that. You see how I'm getting kind of a nice little mess in here. And I'm not going to press as hard, so they're not as big. I'm just going to bring down some leaves that look like that branch there. You just don't want them to be perfectly in uniform. They can be coming off of a couple of branches. You can have a few of them, just a couple little tiny ones coming off the edge if you want. You can connect after with branch. This is going to be tucked under the frame anyways, where I am up here off the edge. But you can, it's up to you to decide how far down you need these to come. If I want a couple to trail down into that, that's all good too. So, excuse me. So now we have our picture and we're looking at it. We have our leaves. And I need to get more matcha there. But, so we've got leaves that are coming up here. You can just touch in a couple of little tiny bits throughout those flowers. You're not putting tons in. We're going to have bits of grass leaves that we bring up spiky there. You can use the flat chisel of your brush, or if you prefer, you could be using your liner. You know, use your
Script liner.
yeah, script liner, thanks. And then we'll come in here and dab in a few leaves. You want a couple head in different directions, and they will stick up in front of a few flowers. If you need more bright, which I'd say we do, you could throw in celery, you could put in, this didn't get shook, you can put in anything that we have in our piece. Okay, so we're going to go through and we're going to add plantation too. We're going to add these leaves. Now over here we have some really big ones. So I would do my press and slide and do two right beside each other. I need some more light. Especially for this, because he's down close to us. We want to see. But you see how I made him a nice fat one. And some of them head different directions. If I ended up that, you know, I snagged a bit of purple off my palette, or I got, that's wonderful. Because that just adds a tint to everything. So it's not a big deal. See, I pick up a little of that purple. Let's just say I did. Accidentally. I don't know. I'm getting into everything here. But that purple, even though I might not see it, is in these leaves. I'm going to make this a double. It'll tint in my leaves. We'd end up with some of that purple showing up. Let's make them show up a bit more on purpose. On purpose. Okay, so you see how that, just that little bit of purple, it adds to the leaves. So you're going to go through after your flowers are finished, and you're going to add your purples.
Put some pink in the leaves over.
It wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt. Those need definitely, when you look up there, I definitely need some lighter, right? I didn't have enough matcha. So you see now how a little bit of those leaves stick out, and it actually draws your eye to the ones that don't stick out as much as well. So you don't have to have all of them have the matcha.
No.
And then we talked about using our brush on the chisel. So I could take with the plantation and the matcha, and I could bring up these grass strokes with my chisel if I wanted to, or I could use the liner. And we put a little, I like to go through these guys, whether it's the liner or the chisel. I like to kind of just go through those guys and get a little bit of green showing somewhere, as if you're seeing the stem through them in a few places. And then we've got grass all over the place, and little tiny leaves. Some people prefer to use their little number 2 filbert. You could do that. Like, it's whatever's comfortable for you. And if you think, oh, well, I should have a little bit of something popping up in there. I do want to show what I did, which I take a little bit of, look at that mess. I take a little bit of plantation pine and blending gel, and that's behind you in that cupboard. Big bottle. Oh, darn. So, whoops. First I said I'm going to take a little of my dioxazine purple and a little, so kind of a plantation pine. So it's green, a browny, greeny purple. How's that sound? Load my brush in gel, side load in this. So you can choose to mix it all together if you want. But this, I'm going to use this purpley green down here to dull down. The flowers.
The bottom.
Yeah, just the bottoms of them. But do you see how that kind of tones it down? And we'll be doing that up here as well. We've got the gel on the brush still, and you can smudge it with your finger. Like, we don't have all the flowers done up here, but you can smudge this with your finger when you go along the bottom of the flower, and then you just smudge it up a little bit. Those ones were pretty wet. You must have just done those, Liz. So it just rounds the flowers and separates them. But if I came up here, I would probably go more and put a bit of black brown into it too. Let's do that, just to see. I'm just going to tone some of these up here. Watch what happens with that. If I load my brush in the gel, well, this is stain antique medium or blending gel. And I side load in this mix. I've got a little more black brown in them. And I just smudge, shade a bit underneath these flowers.
That makes them stand out.
Just smudge those a little bit. But do you see how that kind of grounds it a bit so that they're not so pop out in your face? And it doesn't make, what this does is it makes all the flowers kind of go together. And if you did, say you did it and you thought, oh, I've got too much on there, you can go back with a little bit of your deerfoot and a little bit of white and touch a few tops up. Don't go with everyone, but you can go in there and touch up a few tops. I could take some black plum if I wanted to in that one. But there isn't any on my palette right now. So. But you see this brown that we've got in there just tones it down and antiques it a bit. I always feel like it gives it a bit of antique look. So it just kind of just sets them down. We're going to shade all the way around the outside edge when you're done with the bittersweet and what did I say? Bittersweet chocolate. But I think I'd put a little of the plantation pine in it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking up at the one I did there and it looks a little more greeny.
I'm gonna antique those too.
Yep, yep. I would antique all the flowers. Once Liz has the rest of her flowers on here, it's the same thing with the blending gel and the. But now, if you go put that towards beside your picture.